There comes a quiet moment, barely noticeable, when the soul decides it has given enough. It happens on an ordinary afternoon. The phone vibrates. Another request, another demand that feels like duty. And without anger, you simply don't answer. That silence is not neglect. It is the beginning of awareness. Carl Jung said that life's deepest problems cannot be solved. They must be outgrown. To outgrow is to stop living by reflex, to stop offering yourself automatically to every voice that calls your name. When you are always available, you become a corridor for other people's stories, not the author of your own. Your attention, your time, your listening is the most sacred currency you possess. The psyche knows this long before the mind admits it. It whispers, "You are scattering yourself too thin." So the body grows tired, the smile feels heavier, the hours lose color. The world begins to feel like static because you've tuned to every frequency except your own. And then, one small act of refusal, a pause, a breath, becomes the first step back toward wholeness. Jung called this movement individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, distinct from the mask demanded by society. To stop being endlessly available is not selfish. It is the first sign that individuation has begun. When you step back, something unexpected happens. People begin to reveal themselves. The ones who cherished your presence will feel your absence with respect. They'll reach out with gentleness, not entitlement. But those who were nourished only by your constant availability will feel deprived, as if the world has taken away their favorite distraction. This is the mirror Jung spoke of. Every relationship reflects the inner landscape of the soul. The impatience you see in another's eyes is often your own unhealed fear of being ignored. The person who demands your time without gratitude is the living image of that part of you that once begged for approval. To withdraw gracefully is to hold the mirror steady. You watch reactions unfold like weather across the psyche. Some storms pass, some linger. And in that observation, awareness grows. You realize you were never rejecting others. You were rejecting the pattern that made you forget yourself. Jung reminded us that what irritates us in others can guide us toward what remains unresolved within. When someone calls you selfish for resting, listen carefully. Perhaps the voice belongs to your own neglected need to rest. When someone accuses you of distance, perhaps it is your own longing for closeness that you have postponed. The mirror is merciless, yet merciful. It does not lie, but it teaches quietly. Every disappointment is an invitation to see yourself more clearly. And so, as your circle contracts, your vision expands. You start to notice subtler things. The tone behind a compliment, the energy behind a favor. You see how often generosity was a trade disguised as love. The mind becomes a still lake. The ripples others create no longer distort your reflection. This is the work of individuation made visible. Learning to distinguish genuine connection from the echo of dependency. To stand at the edge of that lake and see yourself clearly without needing another face to confirm that you exist. Hiri. When you stop being always available, you stop performing the role others wrote for you. You begin quietly to write your own lines. When the noise fades, the first thing you hear is the beating of your own heart. At first it feels foreign, too slow, too quiet, but soon you recognize it as rhythm, not emptiness. Solitude is not a punishment for distance, it is a return to original sound. In Jung's language, it is the space where the unconscious speaks. Every unspoken dream, every forgotten instinct waits behind the curtain of constant activity. Sit long enough in that silence, and the inner voice begins to take shape. It does not shout, it suggests. It might tell you to rest, to walk, to paint, to forgive. These are not commands from the outside world, but messages from the psyche, asking for reintegration. At first the mind resists. It craves the familiar hum of obligation, the reassurance of other people's urgency. But gradually you learn to breathe through the quiet. You start hearing nuance, the texture of rain, the faint hum of your own thoughts aligning. Jung called this process active imagination, a dialogue with what lives beneath awareness. You begin to notice symbols, the book that keeps appearing, the recurring dream of open doors, the sudden memory that surfaces without reason. Each is an emissary of the unconscious, inviting you to listen rather than analyze. In solitude, you meet the parts of yourself that were edited out to make room for everyone else. The playful self, the grieving self, the untamed self, they come forward shyly as if asking, is it safe to be seen? And it is, because now you know the difference between being alone and being abandoned. Aloneness nourishes, abandonment depletes. You have crossed the invisible line where quiet becomes communion. Soon you find that solitude no longer feels like an escape, but a foundation. The phone can rest unanswered without guilt. The calendar breathes again. In the stillness, life stops demanding performance and begins revealing pattern. This is the heart of recentering, to return to the axis of your own being, where what you give flows from fullness, not fatigue. And in that centeredness, you start sensing a subtle power, the power of choice, the ability to respond rather than react. You begin to realize that every no you speak creates space for a more authentic yes. And from that space, new connections will be born, not out of need, but resonance. There comes a day when the quiet inside you feels complete, not finished, never finished, but whole enough to hold the noise again. You walk back into the world and notice how its rhythm has changed. Conversations once filled with urgency now sound almost musical. Requests that used to drain you seem lighter, easier to decline or to accept. What has shifted is not the world, but your center of gravity. You've gathered the fragments of yourself that were scattered in 1,000 half-hearted yeses, and you've carried them home. Jung called this the integration of the self, the moment when conscious and unconscious meet, not as strangers, but as allies. You no longer need to divide your life into what is spiritual and what is practical, what is sacred and what is mundane. You see that everything, even an ordinary conversation, belongs to the same field of meaning. People will notice the change. Some will say, you seem distant. Others will say, you've never felt more present. Both will be right, for distance from illusion creates presence in truth. You begin to speak less, but your words carry weight. You listen more, not to agree or to fix, but to understand. You no longer chase attention, you offer awareness. It is quieter, yes, but infinitely stronger. Boundaries are no longer walls. They are contours of the soul. They define not what you keep out, but what you keep sacred within. And because of that, your yes now means something. The world, sensing this new alignment, adjusts itself. Opportunities that match your essence find their way to you. Relationships deepen or dissolve, each according to its truth. You realize that respect, not affection, is the first ingredient of love. That freedom, not control, is the measure of connection. You remember the earlier version of yourself, the one who answered every call, who mistook exhaustion for generosity. You don't judge them, you thank them. They were the bridge that carried you here. This is the gift of individuation, to live as one whole being among other whole beings, not as halves searching for completion. So when the world calls again, and it will, you will still answer, but from a different place. Not from fear of being forgotten, but from the fullness of being found. And in that fullness, you understand what Jung meant when he said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The moment you stop being always available, you become entirely present. And in that presence, everything, truly everything, changes.